drinks that we designed around the 2045 planning process that's going on right now in Henderson County. My name is Katie Breckheimer, and I'm your host this evening. I'm joined by Savannah Lytle, our AmeriCorps staffer, and Gray Jernigan, our Central Regional Director, and Hartwell Carson, our French Broad Riverkeeper. On your screen, you'll see that Gray Jernigan is also a Green Riverkeeper, but he is in transition right now, and I'll explain a little bit of that as we go forward. But before we get into the meat of everything, let's turn it over to Savannah, who's going to just give us our tutorial on what this webinar platform is all about and how you guys fit in.
Thanks, Katie. So hello, everyone. As Katie said, I'm Savannah Lytle, and I'm currently an AmeriCorps member serving with MountainTrue. I am here just mostly for tech support this evening, and I know a lot of us have spent quite a good deal of time on Zoom by this point, but in case either Zoom is new to you or the webinar format of Zoom is new to you, I just want to give you some quick tips. So if you scroll your mouse on your computer or swipe your screen on your phone, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a menu up here with a little toolbar. And this menu has a few icons on it, but one of the most important ones on it is the Q&A icon. So if you have a question, if you could just put your question in the box as they come to you, and Hartwell and Gray will have some time at the end to answer any questions. And with this being a webinar, you do not have a video or audio on, so you should be able to see us, but we can't see you, just so you're aware. But yeah, we're thankful you're joining us tonight. And so if you have any other questions about Zoom, how Zoom works, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. And so everyone is aware, we're recording this webinar tonight, and it will be posted to both the MountainTrue and the Conserving Carolina YouTube, in case you either missed something or you'd like to go back and rewatch some of it. And with that, I'll pass it back to Katie.
Great, thank you. So the plan for this evening is for me to talk just a little bit about what we're doing and why we're here, and then turn it over to our speakers who are going to talk about the state of the river and how land use planning can make or break water quality. We are sponsored locally by MountainTrue and Conserving Carolina, and I always like to give a pitch that these are super great nonprofits that take care of our environment, and we need everybody's support, and become a member if you're not already. So we are actually a chapter of an international movement. Green drinks are happening all over the planet, which makes me feel good. We want chapters worldwide where people get together and talk about and think about the environment and what we need to do to protect it. So the current planning process that Henderson County is involved in is actually required by the state of North Carolina. If we are to use zoning in any way, every 20 years, we need to look at our county and take a really close snapshot of where we are and where we want to go. All of us know we're growing. We can see it every day. People are coming here to share what we have, the beautiful mountains, our climate, our four seasons. People are coming here because where they live, they might have more wildfires. They might be subject to hurricane threats more than we are here. Climate migration is a real thing, and people are moving here in droves. We know this just by looking at our housing market, and we welcome people here, but we don't want to sacrifice our open space and our farmland. And so where are we going to put these new people who are coming? And how do we want it? How do we want our community to be? So our leaders are asking us this very thing. And there are several times during the planning process that the public can give feedback to our leaders so that they know what's important for them to work on. And so our planning process is now about in the middle of our timeline. And from what we understand at this point, the public will be invited to look at the new plan, the draft plan, sometime at the end of the summer, around August. So we need all of you to participate. It's our right to tell our leaders what we want. And if we're not paying attention, we'll miss it. So please stay tuned to MountainTrue and we will keep you posted. In fact, Gray's going to talk a little bit more about that as he gets into his presentation. So without further ado, I want to talk about our esteemed guests this evening. They are both staff members of MountainTrue. I've enjoyed working with both of them throughout the years. Gray Jernigan is a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with degrees in psychology and environmental studies. He went on to earn his Juris Doctor and Masters of Environmental Law and Policy at Vermont Law School. Upon returning home to North Carolina, he practiced law for a small private firm before serving as staff attorney and communications coordinator with the Waterkeeper Alliance, which was based in Raleigh. Gray joined MountainTrue in 2016 as Southern Regional Director. That's why he looks real familiar to a lot of us. He was our main man in the Southern Regional Office based in Hendersonville. In 2022, he moved into a new role as the Central Regional Director, and that will be based in Asheville. And he's just a little bit in transition right now where he's still working in Hendersonville, but he's got one foot in the Asheville office. The Central region includes the counties of Buncombe, Madison, McDowell, Yancey, and Mitchell, which I think is interesting to know. He also leads MountainTrue's legislative advocacy and clean water programs. He's a busy guy. Hartwell Carson has worked to protect the French Broad River for well over 10 years now. He was a champion in forcing Duke Energy to clean up the coal ash pollution that was very evident for most of us and helped to close down the Asheville coal burning power plant. Hartwell also implemented his idea for the French Broad River paddle trail, linking 140 miles of river. He also published a paddle trail map, a book, an app, and an online guide. His concerns over the French Broad River and his advocacy work include ensuring regulation and adequate enforcement to meet the Clean Water Act's goals of making all waters fishable and swimmable. I love that phrase because I think we ought to be able to fish and swim in our waters. Hartwell completed his undergraduate education at the University of Georgia, studying recreation and resource management, and earned his Master's of Science degree from the University of Montana. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Gray, who I think is going to get us started.
Great, thank you, Katie, and appreciate Hartwell for joining me this evening to talk through a very important issue related to comprehensive planning and land use planning generally, and that's protection of water quality. Land use planning can make or break water quality, which is kind of the theme of our talk tonight. First, I want to talk a little bit about MountainTrue, which is the organization that we both work for and that houses our Riverkeeper programs and 2 other Riverkeeper programs and lots of other staff working on water quality and other issues across the region. So MountainTrue is an environmental advocacy organization that champions resilient forests, clean water, and healthy communities across the southern Blue Ridge. We work mostly on public lands and to protect public resources like water. So we protect the places we share. We have 4 regional offices across Western North Carolina, and we have a staff of right around 20 people at this time. all working in different program areas, including public land, clean water, green energy, land use and transportation advocacy, and we encourage civic engagement and getting people involved with our elected leaders and influencing policy as well. So you've got two river keepers on the line tonight. Like I said, I'm wearing quite a few hats at MountainTrue these days, but I'm actually wearing my Green Riverkeeper hat tonight. So I'm your Green Riverkeeper. Hartwell is representing the French Broad Riverkeeper program, which begs the question, what's a riverkeeper? So riverkeepers are part of a global movement of hundreds of riverkeepers and water keepers across the world, protecting their respective watersheds, but they're essentially the fundamental protector of water quality in their watershed. We strive to keep waters swimmable, drinkable, and fishable. And there's lots of different strategies to achieve those lofty goals, but we work to promote safe and healthy waterways by bringing together communities, identifying pollution sources, advocating for policies and protections, and educating and empowering the public to get involved in water protection. Like I said, MountainTrue has 4 riverkeeper programs on the Watauga, the Broad River, the French Broad, and the Green, and we have a great support staff to carry out our clean water programs. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on Henderson County, part of this 4-part series geared toward Henderson County's next comprehensive plan, the 2045 comprehensive plan, which is going to guide development in the county for the next quarter century. And the decisions that are made now are going to influence our water resources for decades to come. It's an incredibly important plan. We have an opportunity here to get it right. And we at MountainTrue and partner organizations and our membership are going to be talking with our county leadership over the coming months and making sure that the policies that we see as a priority are included in that plan. First, I want to give you a little bit of an overview of Henderson County and our water resources here. The bulk of the county, I'm going to use my cursor here, so hopefully you can see my mouse moving around. The bulk of the county in this kind of northern and central part are covered by the French Broad River watershed. The French Broad River goes from west kind of to the north in Henderson County. This little notch up top, that's the Asheville Airport. The river runs just to the west of that. And you can see kind of the river bed, the flood included on this map. Key tributaries of the French Broad are northwest here. That provides drinking water for the city of Hendersonville and Asheville. We also have the Mud Creek watershed, which covers Hendersonville, flows from the south to the north to the French Broad. It's got a major tributary of Clear Creek, which comes in and drains the Dana and Edneyville area from the east. And then you have Cane Creek flowing into the French Broad near the airport, kind of draining the Fletcher area. Then the county is divided by the Continental Divide, which runs along this ridge line and across kind of the eastern part of the county. And to the southeast of the Continental Divide, you have the Green River. Flowing from west to east across the southern part of the county. You have the Big Hungry River flowing down from the north into the Green River. And then the Green River drops off the Blue Ridge Escarpment, dropping about 450 feet over a very short distance down into Polk County, where it flows eventually to the Broad River and becomes much more of a Piedmont River after it drops off the mountain. So I kind of like to describe the county as a tale of two watersheds. You've got the French Broad River, which has challenges and significant impacts to water quality that Hartwell is going to cover here in just a minute. And then right across the Continental Divide here, you've got the Green River watershed, which has much lower intensity land use. It has a lot of protected area in the Green River game lands, right in the southeast corner of the county. And so it benefits from the less intensive land use and protected land. And we see much better water quality in the Green River watershed in Henderson County than the French Broad. But to kind of quantify that water quality, we have produced a State of the Rivers report to show which sections and tributaries and areas of the watersheds are looking pretty good and which aren't looking so hot. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Hartwell to talk us through the French Broad River State of the River report.
Yeah, the number one question I get as a riverkeeper is, is my stream safe to swim? And for a long time, that answer was buried somewhere in some nerdy report at the state level or, in some, reams of data of water quality that most folks didn't understand. So what we tried to do with really all of our watersheds now, we started in the French Broad though, is meld that data together and put it into something pretty easily discernible for the public. And what we're able to do now, and this report starts to show that, is we're able to track trends over time. So this is sort of the first page of the report, and it's basically grouping sub-watersheds. So if you look at the very bottom there, that's sort of the Brevard, Transylvania County area. As you move, the French Broad moves north from Brevard by Hendersonville, and that's kind of that middle French Broad, which encompasses a bit of Asheville too. And then it moves north into Madison County, and then the upper right there, you have the Nolichucky watershed, and you have the Pigeon watershed in that sort of left part. And what you'll notice is, so what we did is we averaged the water quality for all the streams in these sub watersheds. And it's a little hard to see depending on how big your screen is, but water quality is declining in really all of those watersheds, which is unfortunate. You have, the upper was rated an A in our last report. Now it's a C minus. The middle was a B minus, and now it's a C minus. And the trend kind of continues for those other sub watersheds too. So we have, unfortunately, we're not moving in the right direction. And Gray will show the next one where we break out individual streams. So this also is a little hard to see on your stream, on your screen, but this is linked on our website. So feel free, if you're really interested in a certain stream, check this out on the MountainTrue website, or you're welcome to email me, or we can do some questions at the end of this. But what you'll notice is this is again broken into upper, middle, and the lower watershed. And without getting into too much detail of talking about every single one of these streams, I'll just kind of highlight a little bit of what Gray was saying too. If you look at the streams that have really good water quality, like the West Fork of the French Broad River, the North Fork of the French Broad River, Cathy's Creek, these are areas that have good land use protections. These are largely national forest protected streams. You don't have development, you don't have agriculture, and therefore you have, in general, really good water quality. Now, what this is also showing is that the little white bar below each stream is the rating from 2 years ago, and the blue bar on top is the rating from this current year. And so in most cases, we're backsliding, our water quality is going down. Not in every case, but the vast majority of these streams have gotten worse over the last couple of years. So, you might say, why is that? It's a myriad of reasons, but I think a fair chunk of that is the more extreme weather events that we're now getting. So I don't think we're necessarily doing a dramatically worse job or dumping a lot more pollution into the river, but you're getting these extreme rain events, which we'll talk about in a minute, causes a lot of stormwater impacts, a lot of erosion impacts, a lot of sewer overflows, runoff from agriculture, and that is certainly impacting water quality. Hit the next one, Gray, and I'll show, kind of highlight some Henderson County streams. So if you look at the very top there, you're looking at Mud Creek, which is a 68. So, 68 would get me in trouble back in when I was bringing grades home. And I think we should feel like that is not acceptable for, the primary stream of Henderson County to be, in that failing zone. I'm sorry, I didn't really describe that. A, B, C, D, F is kind of obvious. To the right is good, and to the left is bad. So, you have Mill Pond Creek. The Mills River is sort of our best stream that we rate. And again, it's all land use. I mean, a lot of the Mills River is in a protected watershed before it comes out into agricultural land. And there's a lot of effort to improve the practices on those agricultural lands to make sure they're not impacting the Mills River, which is also our drinking water source. And then you have Clear Creek, which has improved a little bit. There's one stream on the previous screen that I wanted to highlight too, which was Boylston Creek. It has actually improved just a little bit, but it has gone, it's still in a pretty poor state. And I just think that was interesting because there was a fight about stream buffers on Boylston Creek years ago. And folks that didn't want stream buffers won. We said water quality would get worse, and it has gotten worse, although it improved a little bit in this report. All right, great. You can hit the next one. You can go on to the next.
So this year we also put out our first ever State of the River report for the Green River. The Green River is a much smaller watershed. You highlighted there on the map at the bottom as part of the large river watershed. But it's a very important watershed to Henderson County. Like I showed on the map, kind of running the southern I'm sorry, my internet interrupted us there. Are you still able to see my screen? Good, Hartwell?
I don't see your screen. I just see you now. I think you froze again. I was wondering if that was my computer or your computer.
Okay, I think I can hear you now. And my screen is showing?
No, it's not.
Okay. Hartwell.
Yeah, you're frozen. Is that on me or on you?
I think we're back on track.
All right, let me get my presentation back up. All right, how are we looking?
It's good to me.
Great. All right, so like I was saying, the Upper Green River above Lake Summit, it's the lowest score, is still a pretty good score, but that area does have some agriculture, which is impacting the stream along with various other things, but still a pretty good score. Proud to take home to your parents at the end of the day if you're bringing that home from school. But I want to move into some of the impacts that we see with water quality and that can be mitigated and adapted to through land use planning, and things that can be adapted in the comprehensive plan. Stormwater is the primary one. It's the primary driver of poor water quality in our region. And we expect the quantity, frequency, and intensity to increase with climate change. Those are the trends we're seeing and that the scientists are documenting, and that are projected to continue in our area. So we're going to be dealing with more water. It's an urban and a rural issue, different pollutants from both, but from urban areas, you're going to see litter, you're going to see oils washing off of the roads and other pollutants. In rural areas, you might see sediment coming off of crop fields. You might see sediment coming out off of developments in urban areas, and higher bacterial levels coming off of sewer systems that are overflowed by stormwater in urban areas, and bacteria from livestock in rural areas. In a sea of litter on the French Broad. All of this has been swept off by stormwater into a local stream and built up in this cove here. But a whole lot of single-use plastic in there that has washed off into our waterways. We see sedimentation and turbidity coming off of construction sites when it rains, and those stormwater protections are either non-existent or become overwhelmed. Sedimentation from streams. You can see this, the confluence of two streams, a stream flowing into the French Broad with high sedimentation, and that's going to impact aquatic habitat and everything that lives there. Stormwater also contributes to landslides, and landslides can be huge contributors of sediment to waterways, which can choke out aquatic life. Hard to tell, but this is a photo from the river of a cow operation, a livestock operation. And you can see that nasty foamy water full of bacteria that's running off into the river, and that can make people sick. And here we have a Girl Scout posting a swimming advisory, and oftentimes we can count on the Girl Scouts just as well or better as we can count on our government officials to post accurate and timely information about what's in our rivers. But like I said, there's ways to mitigate and adapt to stormwater, and part of that is good land use planning that accounts for climate change and accounts for the increased amount of rainfall. This was covered in other parts of the series by staff at Conserving Carolina, and you can watch those on our YouTube channel. Get kind of a more robust picture about what that looks like. But essentially, parks, floodplains, river buffers, and rural land provide opportunities for stormwater to infiltrate rather than run off into streams. And so by encouraging the conservation of our rural character of the county with dedicated funding, and mechanisms to, and other quality of life benefits like recreation and viewshed protection outside of our urban areas. Another big issue that combined with stormwater can contribute to bacterial levels in our waterways that are a big concern for the number of people that we see using our rivers for recreation, and the businesses that rely on that, are wastewater infrastructure. In urban areas, that's sewer. In rural areas, it's septic. But we have some policies that are kind of best practices around wastewater infrastructure. So prioritizing development where sewer infrastructure already exists. These are smart growth principles. Our first presentation in the series was around smart growth, and you can watch that on YouTube, but that's what it's all about: concentrating our development around where we have urban services and discouraging the expansion of sewer services into the countryside. Investing in improvements to existing systems to address capacity, inflow and infill pit, and causes an overflow, which goes into nearby waterways. With septic systems at residential houses across the countryside and sometimes in urban areas, septic works best when it has room to work. And we see problems with septic failing or overwhelming the soils when we see it concentrated in urban areas. So it's a best practice to keep urban areas connected to sewer, and septic can be used out in the countryside where limited density allows it to function. And so there are tools in land use planning to limit the density that's allowed in rural areas, and that protects our rural and agricultural heritage at the same time. I want to turn it to Hartwell to talk a little bit about bacteria pollution in our waterways and kind of some work that we've been doing around in and around Hendersonville to track down sources of bacteria.
Yeah, the most concerning pollutant, to humans is bacteria, and specifically E. coli is what we test for. One of the biggest programs at MountainTrue is called the Swim Guide program. We test about 80 sites throughout Western North Carolina, and we post those results weekly in the summer months when folks are out swimming. These are the French Broad, these are tributaries, these are the Green River, and what became a way to sort of tell the public about the water quality. But really, we wanted to use this as a tool to improve water quality and not just tell folks what it was, or if it was clean this week or not. And so what we use the Swim Guide for every day is really to figure out what the trends are, where are the problem spots, where are we seeing places that are getting worse, and track down those sources of pollution and fix those sources. So we have some great stories of noticing the Swim Guide site really decline, and then doing a water quality investigation and find leaky sewer pipes. And those are great when you can get those fixed. But the problems are pretty complicated, they're pretty diverse, and they can be very hard to track down. But we've spent a great deal of time and effort of looking into those problems. You get the next one, right? So one of the tools that we're using, which is sort of the next level in sophistication, instead of just figuring out you have high E. coli or low E. coli, we're starting to use something called DNA testing, where we can figure out the levels of E. coli, but we can also determine why it's high. Is it from human? Is it from cows? Is it from dogs? So these charts are examples of where we've done that. Specifically, the bottom right, though, is Mud Creek. And, what we found, what I would have predicted when we started is we would find human and cow. Those would be our primary sources. And that was true. But what I didn't quite predict is that we would find as much cow as we did find. So that has sort of led us, has been very helpful, because it's led us towards a series of solutions that we hope will be beneficial in improving water quality, such as trying to get more money for the soil and water conservation districts. But we did find still a fair bit of human in our samples, and so we're continuing to pursue solutions that will clean up that E. coli contamination in our waterways. You get the next one, Greg. One of those tools, which is very interesting, was infrared imaging. And so we contracted with a company to fly the city of Hendersonville We knew that Mud Creek had a lot of E. coli problems. We knew that some of those problems were from humans. And so our natural belief was that it was probably from our sewer system, from the Hendersonville sewer system. So we actually partnered with the Hendersonville Sewer Authority, which I thought was very, very cool that they were proactive and they wanted to find problems if they existed, as opposed to some places that just want to bury their head in the sand and don't want to know what kind of problems they have in their system. We contract with the company. They go up at night in the winter when it's cold and it hadn't rained. And the goal is to take pictures of the entire sewer infrastructure and overlay that with the photos and the pipes and figure out if there's a warm image from the photos that is near a sewer pipe. It's a fair assumption that it could be a sewer leak. So this data was interesting. You can hit the next one, Greg. And it alerted us to about 40 different potential problems. And so we spent a great deal of time with the city of Hendersonville trying to figure out, on the ground truth and what those problems were. And this is one example. This is the kind of image that was produced. So there's a sewer line right near here. That white is a warmer discharge, and it's going into this lake. And so, we thought, whoa, that could be a sewer leak. So we go to that spot, we see what's there, we take a water sample, and I was pleased to report that we found no sewer leaks from this imaging that we did. And so while I'd hoped to find a lot and we would fix a lot, it was really good news to know that Hendersonville's system is a lot tighter than we thought it was, at least from those day-to-day, hole in a pipe leaking out. They certainly still have some issues with sewer overflows, but they're, as far as day-to-day leaks, the city of Hendersonville is doing pretty good. And so that, again, educated us on the problems and diverted us into a new direction, which is sampling for septic. And so that's what this map shows. We figured if we know we're getting high E. coli, and we know some of that is from the samples we've taken. If sewer is not our primary problem, then it's fair to assume that septic could be a contributor. So we took a map that the city of Hendersonville did with Department of Environmental Quality, and that was identifying potentially problematic septic areas right in and around the city of Hendersonville. So that's what those gray shapes are. They're potentially problematic septic areas, and then those different colored markers are our sample sites. So we're trying to sample above and below as many of these problematic septic areas as we can to determine, if it is a problem or not. And what we found after a year of data is we think that septic is a significant contributor to the water quality impairments that we see in Mud Creek. We're finding high E. coli just downstream of many of these septic areas. And we're finding it at times that aren't necessarily associated with stormwater runoff. So this is not right after a big, rain event. So we're using, this is an example of some of our old sampling. And so we're tracking down septic and we're using our sampling to identify problem areas. This is one good example of a success story where we knew we had a problem from that downstream sample there. Number of dots is sort of an indicator of E. coli. So we went upstream and we found very little E. coli. And then we knew there was a problem in between the downstream and the upstream. We walked the stream and we found a big leaky sewer pipe, which was fixed. So this was not in the Hendersonville area, but we are still, tracking down failing sewer problems, but also looking at septic and agriculture issues, as I mentioned before. And sometimes the work, takes us to where the problems are, which is, where the pipes run underground. So this was finding a problem actually in the Asheville River District, which is a big sewer leak that we were found and able to eliminate.
Thank you, Hartwell. One other issue we're facing in the county is population growth. We know we're getting more stormwater over the years. We're also getting more people. And so the population is projected to grow by 13,000 new residents by 2030. So, development and housing and where we put all those people, it's inevitable. I mentioned smart growth, infill development, preventing urban which reduce amount of future runoff, prioritizing strategies that facilitate stormwater capture, treatment, and infiltration rather than runoff directly to our streams, which exacerbates other problems that impact water quality. So that's a huge part of comprehensive planning, is managing growth. That's the name of the game. And there are ways to do that by setting urban services boundaries, by investing in agricultural protection, by setting density goals and restrictions for different areas, whether they be urban, rural, or transition areas. All of these can be addressed in a comprehensive plan. So in summary, how a comprehensive planning can make or break water quality. We can make it by promoting infill development, preserving our rural and agricultural heritage, concentrating urban services in existing urban areas, expanding parks, greenways, and open space. All this is beneficial to the community and beneficial to our waterways. But we can just as easily break it by allowing sprawling development, extending urban services into the countryside and rural lands, and allowing development in floodplains and river buffers that serve as kind of the last guard of water quality. But prioritizing water quality, it's a win-win-win. Focusing on this in our comprehensive plan benefits economic growth, that preserves our rural and agricultural character in the county, enhances our quality of life, and respects our natural resources. And this plan is going to last for decades. So we need to get it right this time. Henderson County 2045.com. But I just want to forecast some upcoming opportunities. We're expecting a draft plan to be released in the coming months, so stay tuned for that. We'll be publicizing that on our email, newsletter, social media channels, the ways that we get information out. Make sure you're signed up for them, because we will get the information to you. And we need everybody to get involved. We need people to speak out and to vocalize that these priorities are your priorities, and they should be the priorities for the people at the county, the folks in charge that are putting this plan together and ultimately going to vote on it. So be in touch with your elected leaders. We'll be providing opportunities for that. So stay tuned, and please join us in advocating through this process. Lastly, MountainTrue and Conserving Carolina, both the sponsors of this event, are membership organizations. So please join both of our organizations as a member. We do different and complementary work. And so it's important to support both of us. Like I said, sign up for our email list, follow us on social media. You can call us or email us. There is mine and Hartwell's email address if you want to follow up on any of the things we covered. We're on social media. Our website's MountainTrue.org. You can find information at all of those locations. So please join us and follow us and participate in the process. And with that, we can open it up for questions.
That was great. That was a lot of information, wasn't it? And I'm sorry if we had technical trouble. I don't know what's up with that, but we persevered. So that was good. Savannah, how's it looking? Anybody asking questions?
Yeah, we do have a question. So Beth is asking, what is the criteria used to judge water quality?
That's a good, Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a complicated answer. You know, we talked about a few different things. I talked about the swim guide, and the swim guide is really just E. coli. That's what we're using to measure whether an area is safe to swim or not. And E. coli is from, you know, human or animal waste. But we also talked about the State of the River report, and that is a more comprehensive look at all of the water quality data that's out there. And so that report consists of our E. coli data, but it also consists of state data, which is a series of anything from bug data to chemical data to fish data. And the last source is the Environmental Quality Institute data, which is a combo of chemical data and also bug data. So it's quite a mishmash of data and data sources that we use to kind of put that report together. And I think that gives us the most comprehensive view of water quality. But let me know if that doesn't answer your question.
Well, I'll just add that we have an extensive volunteer network of people who are taking samples in our local waterways. If that is something that interests you, we can sure use your help. It's not a hardship. It's if you're doing the VWIN program, it's once a month. If you're doing swim guide sampling, that's a little more intense. We also have a SMIE program with a different set of volunteers who sample twice a year. So if you're interested, please contact us in any of the ways that are showing up on your screen. Any other questions? Well, actually, I had one. I was going to just ask you guys, it just seems like the intensity of the storms we're having much more frequently than ever before. Do you feel like our stormwater regulations are adequate? And if not, is that something that a comprehensive plan could address?
Yeah, I'm happy to try that, but Gray might be a good person to chime in too. I think a lot of the stormwater protections are designed for smaller storm events. And I think what we're seeing now is these more frequent heavy events. And so I think our regulations should probably be beefed up in order to accommodate what we're seeing on a regular basis, which are these bigger, harder storms. You know, there's also a, you know, kind of another way to look at that too. I think a lot of additional stormwater protection should also be focused on areas that we know need them. You know, one thing we've been pitching in Asheville is to look at the streams that we know are having water quality issues and propose additional regulations like designing to bigger storm events or have requiring ground cover in a faster manner than maybe you do in other areas. And so I think that could be a great tool, and hope that's something maybe Henderson County will consider.
That's interesting. So you're getting
So we
into,
do have a few questions.
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Katie. I was just gonna so Garrett is asking, do you expect the county to try to meet any land use related smart growth targets, like accommodating a certain percentage of new dwellings growth, one sewer service area or another?
Hopefully Gray's not frozen because I don't know the answer.
I was only frozen for the first half of the question. Could you repeat?
Well, it's a complex question. Do you want to give it to us one more time, Savannah?
Yeah, so Garrett is asking, do you expect the county to try to meet any land use related smart growth targets, like accommodating a certain percentage of new dwellings growth, one sewer service area or another?
Well, I think the smart growth can be achieved in a number of ways. Some of the types of targets of the question or references, it could be done through zoning and different recommendations, but we don't expect anything from the county just yet. We're waiting to see. And that's why everybody needs to be involved in the process. And when this draft plan is announced, we're going to look and see what the county includes in there. And then we're going to advocate for the things that we want to see improved. And it's important.
Oops.
Important to note what the comprehensive plan does and does policies or ordinances or enforceable requirements. So that's kind of the work that comes out, needs to be done to update the land development code and to update other ordinances to achieve the goals set out in the comprehensive plan. So we are hopeful that the county is going to include some of those guidelines and set us.
This is painful. Gray's frozen on my screen again. And I would say, just to add to the conversation, that some of the research that we're doing is showing that our urban areas can accommodate a lot of the growth that we see coming in. And we need to coordinate with our municipalities and all work together to protect our lower density areas that we love so much, the farmland, the rural character. So yeah, it can be complicated, but a plan is just a plan, and the implementation of that plan is going to be critical. So we're here for the long haul. Anything else, Savannah? What you got?
Yeah, so Erica is asking, the agricultural pollutants that we are seeing, is that small scale or larger scale farms in our region?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was a little surprised that that cows in our DNA sampling came up so frequently. You know, we don't have these giant farms like they have in Eastern North Carolina, where you might have 50,000 head of, you know, pig or whatever. Mostly we're dealing with smaller farms, and most of our farms do a pretty good job, but when they don't, you know, an example of not doing a good job would be not fencing your cattle out of stream, letting them have access to our streams, which they go to the bathroom in the streams, or not having a good buffer where, you know, runoff can come from the field. So I think it is mostly small farms, and that's why we were really interested and are still pushing hard to get some extra money to our soil and water conservation districts. They're the folks that lend a hand to small farmers. You know, they'll help pay for fencing your cattle out of a stream through a good cost share program. So we're hoping that can be a good step towards reducing the inputs of agricultural pollution.
So we have one more question from Beth. And Beth is saying, bravo to all your work. And how do you address septic?
Hang on. Oh, good question. And I meant to hit on that in the presentation. The septic pollution that we're finding around Hendersonville is very close to existing sewer infrastructure. So while we're not big champions of wildly extending sewer infrastructure out into the county, because that drives a lot of growth and sprawl, you know, where you extend sewer, you're going to have growth. But what's happened for a variety of reasons is that, you know, there's a lot of fairly dense neighborhoods that have grown up just around Hendersonville, and there aren't sewer to these neighborhoods. And it's a little surprising to see how close they are to all the city infrastructure without having sewer. They have city water, but they don't have sewer. So our solution is to make some short extensions into these neighborhoods, hook them up to sewer. It's not going to drive a lot of increased growth because most of these neighborhoods are already built out, but it can take the sewage problem away and put it into the collection system and then into the wastewater treatment plant. But that's a real complicated nut to crack, and basically because the city and the county have hated each other for 100 years, and so the city doesn't want to extend sewer without annexing, and the county doesn't want to be annexed, and so you get to this loggerhead that we're trying to crack.
Yeah, it's a real push me pull ya, isn't it? We're gonna have to work that out. Well, we're getting close to the end of our hour. I wanted to encourage everybody to know your ecological address, know where your watershed is. I loved the fact that Gray spent some time pointing out where our waterways are. And it's fascinating to me to know that the Continental Divide runs through our county and where our water flows. These river keepers, this is their day-to-day work, but you may not know where the water on your roof, the rainwater on your roof, where does it end up? Where does it go? So good to get to know your ecological address, and it will help you understand where the municipalities are, where our areas of lower density are, and what we need to do to protect them. So start looking at maps, folks. I know we do it a lot. And if you don't, it's a good time to start. Where are you at? Let's figure that out. So thank you to our speakers tonight, and please contact them if you have further questions. As I said a little bit earlier, this is the end of our Good Growth Makes Good Sense special series on planning, and we will keep you posted on any further green drinks when we're feeling safer, where we can get back together in person. We are up for rebooting our green drinks. But for now, this is it, and please stay in touch. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you all.